Hi, this is my introduction to living off the grid. Off the grid is going to be a series of 2 DVDs. This first one deals mainly with modern day living off the grid, and the second one will be a little bit more primitive. Now, I was of 2 minds on how to just how much to put into this introduction and into the DVD itself. Many people like to look at the world through rose-tinted glasses. They don't really want to know the facts and the truth about certain things because they find it scary. Now, the last thing I want to do is to scare anyone, and to put them off going and living out of town. But I was of 2 minds whether just to leave it out or whether I should say something about security, and I feel that I ought to mention it. You can have problems when you're living out of town, and you do need to be aware that the world is not, as most people see it, a nice place to live in all the time. You are in some danger when you're out bush, whether you're camping or whether you're living there permanently like I am. I can only talk about security in regards to my own experiences. I can't say if you're going to experience any problems at all. Much depends on what sort of area you're living in. If you move on to a block of, say, several or more 5-acre blocks where you've got neighbours, there may not be a problem. On the other hand, if like me you're living out on a fairly large block of land and you're living a good way from town and your neighbours are not close by, then you do leave yourself open to intruders. Now, intruders can come in many forms. They might just be there to steal stuff, but it can turn nasty if you catch them stealing stuff. Some people will actually invade your home to do you harm because they find it's fun. So you have to bear this in mind. Now, I know a lot of people also look at the retreat out of town, living off the grid as a bug-out retreat, as the Americans call it. This is when things get too bad in town, it all hits the fan and you can't live there any longer. You move out bush and you live there where you can grow your own food, etc., etc. This is good, but in that sort of situation the security problems are going to be far greater than they are in present day. So you need to think about that. Now, I don't want to go into guns and arming yourself too much. The law, as I understand it at present, says that if you want to use a gun in self-defence, you basically have to have already been shot yourself. This is not cool, especially if that shot kills you first time. You don't have the chance to defend yourself. So look, I'm going to leave that up to you. What you think about that and what you do about that is entirely your own business. I'm not going to advise on this at all. I can only say that I have been in situations where I was very glad to have had a gun and if I had not have had one, I probably would not be here today. There's a good chance. So there it is. Security is a priority when you're living out of town, whether it just be living there in present day, now, or later on when it becomes a survival issue. I suggest you have a good lock on your gate. It doesn't stop people from coming in on foot, but at least they will know that if they're on foot they have to get out by foot, and it can take them a while to reach the gate or the boundary, and in that time they are at risk themselves. People can still get on your property by cutting the fence. It's not a good idea for them to drive through the fence or over it, because if they do that they can get the wire actually wrapped around their wheels, and that can make a mess of the car. So most people with any sense will cut your fence first and then drive through. There's nothing you can do to stop them doing that. But at least if they're doing that, it means that they have to go to a bit more trouble to actually get a vehicle onto your property. The good side about them having to come in on foot is the fact that, as I say, they have to leave a vehicle behind. The bad side is if they're on foot, you probably won't see or hear them coming. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you leave the gate open, you can suddenly find yourself with a ute full of guys with guns on your doorstep. But you may hear the vehicle coming. I know this all sounds a bit far-fetched to some and scary, but I'm afraid it's the truth, it's the facts. This is the sort of thing that you may have to put up with if you're going to live off the grid. As I say, it depends on where you're living as to how safe it is. So I'll say no more on firearms and other security measures. I'll leave it up to you. Personally myself, I keep my doors locked, whether I'm inside on my own or not. I tend to do it more often, I guess, and pay more attention to it when the wife is home, because I feel I'm also responsible for her security as well as mine. I don't worry too much or as much when I'm on my own. I feel I can handle the situation without having to worry about anybody else. But at the same time, I'm well aware of my limitations and how bad it can get. So yes, I advise put a gate on a lock on your front gate, and keep your doors locked whenever you can when you're inside the house. There's nothing worse than turning around from doing a chore in the kitchen and find somebody standing behind you. Okay, this can happen in town too, and they should do the same thing in town. Keep your doors locked. Okay. All right, that's all I'm going to say on the matter. We'll move on to the actual DVD. Thanks for listening.